We welcome Bobby Burton from inside Texas. This is a strange time for the Longhorns. Quinn Ewers out for a little while. Maalik Murphy is the guy at the moment. Arch Manning taking the first team reps too in case they need him. How is the mood around Austin now that Quinn Ewers is out?
Well, I think they're cautiously optimistic. I mean, Maalik Murphy had a great spring game, as most people know that follow college football and Texas Longhorn football in particular. He had a great spring game. The question that we have right now with Maalik Murphy is not so much can he do it, Andy? It's what's going on behind the scenes. Murphy missed a practice last week for a non-disclosed illness, injury, something. Arch Manning's going to have to be ready as well. But all in all, if you get past that, there's the idea that his teammates really liked Maalik Murphy. He came in against Houston, and he didn't look like the moment was too big for him. When he came in, it was 24-24 in the fourth quarter. Maalik had a 3-and-out, but then led him on the game-winning scoring drive. Mm-hmm. Longhorns win. He's well-liked by teammates. I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly how much of Steve Sarkisian's offense gets dialed back and fine-tuned with either Murphy or Arch Manning being the guy.
So with Maalik, he did have such a great spring game, and that was one where it felt like people were all over him, that he had maybe some transfer portal opportunities to maybe go start somewhere else, and he stayed at Texas. What was it that kept him in the fold there?
I think he likes Steve Sarkisian. And I think not a lot of people know this, but Malik's entire throwing motion has been revamped in a year. And Sark did that with him. Maalik used to have this very long release. And so the reason Maalik signed with Sark in the first place is because he's a little bit of a QB whisperer, right? And so he had some faith there. It wasn't that he was going to necessarily unseat Quinn Ewers this year, but given what Sark has done at USC, at Washington, and then at Alabama, it seems to be if you wait in line and bide your time at quarterback under Steve Sarkisian, you're going to end up cashing a pretty big paycheck. I would say the other thing is this. He has been oft injured. Like he's had an ankle problem, a foot problem, and he never really got a ton of time overall. Even last spring, he missed a week of practice, Andy. So we'll see how it goes. But like I said, the players like him. I think that's clear. He's one of the guys. It'll be interesting to see where Steve Sarkisian takes his team with Maalik Murphy at quarterback.
Well, and so you mentioned this, and I see the kind of but and potential, for injury potential for him being out as well. So let's talk Arch Manning, because that's obviously the guy that everybody followed his recruitment. He gets to Texas. Everybody was, okay, when's he going to play? When's he going to play? It felt like the thought was to redshirt Arch, but it seems like this is a break glass in case of emergency situation.
It is. That's a great way to put it. It's like, and for Sark, it may be, it may be that he's breaking the glass of the cigarette so he can take a drag, because he's going to be that kind of concerned right now, because the season kind of hangs in the balance. Texas is 6-1, Andy. This is high cotton for Texas in the last decade, where they have a real chance at a Big 12 title, potential rematch with the Sooners. With Arch, it's very interesting. 3 weeks ago, Sark, just out of the middle of nowhere in the middle of a press conference, said, "Oh, and by the way, Arch Manning had his best week of practice ever." And that was a little nod that, okay, this guy may be getting ready. And behind the scenes, he's been taking reps with the 1s and 2s this entire offseason, or this entire season, not just Maalik Murphy. Maalik Murphy is next in line, but I get a strong sense that we're going to see Arch Manning at some point during BYU, and maybe for the rest of the season, depending on Quinn Ewers and his injury.
Well, and that's the thing, the AC joint sprain. I know the NFL fans learned a lot about that with Anthony Richardson, who has shut it down for the season. talking to people who've had that injury, it is incredibly painful. And so, do we really know how long Quinn Ewers is going to be out?
No, Sark described him as week to week. From behind the scenes, what we're hearing, 3 to 4 weeks, maybe. That's what they're hopeful for, or what Quinn and himself and his family are hopeful for. But we don't know. I mean, it could linger. It's a injury, to your point, that is non-specific in its length of time for recovery. It's not a torn meniscus and he's out for 2 weeks, right? It's more questionable. It's going to be a lot about pain tolerance and perhaps about how much Texas really needs him too. We'll see if that comes into play, but you don't want to risk the golden arm, right? Because this is a guy that has a lot of football ahead of him in his career, not just at Texas.
Well, and when Texas lost to Oklahoma, I think the assumption from all of us on the outside was these two are going to finish out the Big 12. No, not going to lose another game. They're going to play each other again in the Big 12 championship game. And I think now, after watching Oklahoma UCF last weekend, after watching Texas and Houston, it's a different story. And Texas in the more precarious situation because they have the loss and have more margin or less margin for error. How much concern is there with BYU coming in?
Well, BYU is interesting because they're 5-2, but they've had a bad loss at Kansas.
TCU.
Yeah, I feel like BYU is interesting because they have a better defense than they do offense, and they turn people over. And Texas is starting a rookie quarterback, essentially, right?
Yeah,
that's like tailor-made for a defensive coordinator's dream. Okay, I turned the Texas Tech freshman quarterback over 5 times on Saturday. I'm going to do that to the Texas freshman quarterback this week. That being said, it's not so much about BYU as it is the whole. I want to say this, and this is, you grew up, you went to Florida, you play big games, right? Like Florida, Georgia, Florida State. Those take a lot out of teams, okay? Texas and OU came off this bye week. They took a bye week after their game, and that was a bloodletting of sorts, right? Texas did not play well in that game, and they took a toll on them. OU, meanwhile, played well, and it took a toll on them. Those mid-year rivalry games, if you win or lose, sometimes you just need to get back up on the horse and play right away the next week to kind of get the cobwebs off. Waiting this week after that game may not have been what was best for either of those teams. They needed to get going. And so I don't know if what you saw is necessarily indicative of the Texas team or the OU team that you'll see the rest of the year. They're better than what they played on Saturday, both of them.
Well, the one that concerns me more than anything is not necessarily this week against BYU, but K-State next week. Because you look at the way K-State's played the last couple of weeks since they started sprinkling more Avery Johnson. They look dangerous, and because one of their losses is to Missouri, they're still in the Big 12 title hunt. That's where I would be very afraid. And you and I have the benefit of not being on the Texas team, so we don't have to not think about them yet. We can think about them right now, and that looks like the scariest game left on the schedule for Texas.
I don't disagree at all, Andy. In fact, that's what we've been talking about on Inside Texas for almost, probably 2 weeks ago, whenever Texas first lost, and they implemented Avery Johnson against Texas Tech more frequently. K-State did, the young quarterback. Here's the issue with that. K-State focuses heavily on the run game, right? Mm-hmm. That's actually the Texas defensive strength. Okay. That is the one thing that Texas can do is stop the run. I think they gave up 19 yards on the ground to Houston on Saturday. Okay. Houston moved the ball exclusively through the air. Texas didn't give up much rushing yardage to Alabama. These are teams that run the ball. Teams that run the ball don't necessarily run the ball well on Texas because they have a pretty stout defensive front. Where Texas has been weak on defense, Andy, is in the secondary, particularly at safety. And so Texas, in some ways, lines up well with Kansas State from that standpoint. I do think Avery Johnson gives them a different element that could push them to becoming the best offense or overall team in the Big 12 at K-State. I am a little concerned about K-State's defense. I think they're improving, but I don't know that they're proven.
Yeah.
So, it may be that game, the first 1-30 wins.
Well, and at that point, Maalik will have had a start under his belt, or if Arch comes in and plays well, he'll have some seasoning. So I would imagine we'll have a better idea of what the Texas offense will look like. But how has Steve Sarkisian handled all this? You mentioned that maybe closing down the offense a little bit for Maalik. He is the quarterback whisperer. How has he handled getting these two guys ready?
So it's interesting. That's a great discussion, Andy. What he said yesterday is that each and every week during season, he asks his backup quarterbacks what plays they like that week. And then he tracks it each and every week so that when he's now this is the 8th game of the year. He's now had 8 weeks of Arch and Maalik telling them the 3 or 4 plays each week they like. And so he has a little bit of a reference book, or almanac to go back to and say, okay, you like this, let's incorporate things off of this. Pretty bright. I would not say that he was in his Monday press conference. I wouldn't say he was down. I think he was forthright. Sark tends to be pretty even keel and has been that way since he's been at Texas, even when they've been losing, right? But they are doing fairly well right now, and I feel like he's got some confidence, but he knows he needs to go out and play. They'll have to win this game against BYU somehow. K-State will be an absolute test for them, in my opinion.
I love that, having the menu of what the backup's like, because that does seem to be one of the issues when a backup quarterback gets in the game, is you're not entirely sure what he's good at, what he prefers. So at least you can have a base menu of plays no matter who is in there, whether it's Maalik or Arch.
I agree. That's when he started talking about that at Monday's presser, a little light bulb went off in my head. You've been around football a long time. It's rare that you get a peek into the true madness behind the whole thing, and I felt like that was very revelatory. It's interesting that they think that far ahead in case of break, in case of emergency, right? Like you just talked about. I felt like that was pretty smart. There is no doubt that they're going to have to lean heavily on the run game for the next several weeks while Quinn's out. They've been buoyed by not only Jonathan Brooks, Andy. He's had a tremendous year, fell 1 yard short of 100 yards again this past week, went 20 for 99. But I tell you what, a young running back out of Florida, out of Orlando, Cedric Baxter, for the first time all year, he looked healthy and he looked legit, like big time legit against Houston. He hit the game-winning touchdown from about 16 yards out. And when he hit the hole, he exploded through it like a rare guy. I'll just put it that way. He looked like this guy's going to be a dude. And so I think Texas will lean on those 2 running backs. I think Sark does something that's a little different than most people. He runs a lot of 6 offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
He actually puts an offensive guard at tight end.
Right.
Times in what they call a big 11 personnel package, which is 1 tight end, that's the big guy, and 1 running back.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 4 wides. And by doing that, he presents the defense a real question mark. If I put more in the box, then all of a sudden Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell may be man up outside.
Yeah.
And he's done some nice things. That is one of the things I think they will try to do, not only against BYU, Andy, but K-State, Iowa State, et cetera.
Well, and that's what a great incentive to go play offensive line for him, because you may get that eligible number thrown on you and get to do some things. So that's a recruiting tool too, Bobby.
He's yet to catch a pass, but we'll see.
Well, Bobby, I appreciate it. Gonna be fun to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that the Longhorns and BYU give us a good game. Keaton Slovis, these guys that have been to so many different programs have seen so many different things. They've got a little head on their shoulders. It's a little bit different than everybody else. I mean, Keaton Slovis, JT Daniels, those guys. I mean, it's different.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They played together at one time and now they've been to like 94 different schools.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Bobby.
All right, buddy.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.